This guy. He's got it going. We're ready. Let's get after it.
We're ready. Hey, folks, we are at the Money Show in Orlando, where we've been filming commercials for the book, the new book, It's Not an Option, as well as hanging out with our pal, Charles Payne. We might even do a
little flyby.
A flyby, just like in Maverick.
I don't know why
Top
we wouldn't. Yeah, let's not even call in to ask him.
The pattern's full. That's what Charles will be saying. The pattern's full.
By the way, we saw him today. He was going in to work out. That son of a gun looks like he could play for the Eagles right now. I mean, holy smokes.
They need him more at the Giants, Pete.
Oh, yeah. He's needed a lot of other places, that's for sure. Maybe Kansas City. But we'll get to that later.
Oh, it's a tough weekend for the Kansas City fans. Taylor may have
Swifties
basically canceled Mr. Pfizer. But we'll get to that in just a bit. Thanks for joining us, folks. Again, we're here at the Money Show. Pete Najarian and I'm John Najarian. Jared is handling all of the difficult duties, made more difficult by the fact that we had to rush up from a bunch of interviews and all the rest, so we can't do the usual for the Rebel's Edge. So we appreciate all of you joining us, and Jared with the
That's the way my head felt like when I woke up today.
But without further ado, let's talk a little macro, Pete. Macro so far today is that the markets are not nearly as crappy as they were Friday. And in fact, they're a lot better.
Yeah.
Because the Dow's up big, the NASDAQ's up pretty good. And, crude oil is down almost $3 a barrel.
And I think the crude oil part is the part that is the most interesting to me, just because the path has been going down, 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 down. Truth be told, I thought that this thing was heading towards 100. I literally didn't even faze me when we were up at 94, but here we are now in the very low 80s. We haven't been this low in quite a while. So it's a pretty interesting ride for crude right now.
Yep, I agree. And we will keep a close eye on that. It's certainly something that I think could move violently. God forbid something happens in the Straits of Hormuz or wherever. Again, fingers crossed on that. Let's talk a little bit about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
So fantastic futures today, Pete. I'm going to say Bitcoin is back up again. And because Bitcoin's up, I'm thinking that should be one of the futures that we talk about today. Those are, of course, traded over at the CME, the Bitcoin futures on the listed markets. And that was pretty interesting because Mara and Riot and MicroStrategy were all moving up with it.
Yeah, that is interesting for sure. I'll tell you what, my fantastic future would just be the volatility index itself. Even though we've pulled back significantly, we're still above that 20 level. And will we sustain that? Is that something that we are going to be in for a little while longer? I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch that. Plus, later on in the week, obviously, we've got some conversations from the Fed coming as well.
Yeah, and that will be something that will certainly drive markets. But I got to believe, Pete, they're going to continue to apply pressure.
Yeah.
That is the Fed, because we've had some hot readings. All right, let's talk about XPO. Because, for one reason, Pete, one of our former employees was the chief technology officer over there for a while, and that stock just zoomed. XPO is a logistics company. They're up on earnings and a solid quarter for them. Was there anything that was very surprising in this report, Pete?
I think not necessarily surprising, but in the markets, we're always looking around trying to find something that's really truly unusual about the move itself. I think in this particular case, I don't know that it was unusual. I think it was somewhat expected. In the markets that we're in today, it makes some sense that this company might be able to put up numbers like they did. And the numbers they put up certainly are reflected by this move to the upside, 5, 6, 7%. That's pretty impressive. Earnings season is still here. It isn't over, folks. Everybody wants to say, well, we got through the banks. We got through a lot of the techs. We still got Apple in front of us as well. So earnings are not over.
Nope, not at all. Let's take a look at Mittal, which is ArcelorMittal. This is, of course, one of the biggest companies in the world. It's also the biggest steel company on earth. And the shares were getting cracked because the Kazakh government announced that they were going to take over the company's operations in Kazakhstan following the worst mining accident in their history. At least 45 workers killed and so forth. And the reason that this is not just news is that it bodes poorly for companies doing business in Kazakhstan. Why is that? Because you can't just take over a company that comes into your country to do business. If you do, a lot of the other companies, Pete, will leave because they'll say, why am I going to spend $2 billion putting up a new steel facility or a new pipeline company or whatever it might be in your country if you guys just turn around and take it, even if there is a tragedy?
Yeah, it is an interesting move, and it's something that I think we're going to have to follow this very closely. We talk about different parts of the market all the time, and certainly when you get into this aspect of it, and we're talking about deaths here as well, that's a lot of complications that are going on. I think I would stay away from some of those materials that are exposed out there, John. There's miners all over the place. We know of so many of them. We also know that there's deals out there left and right with U.S. Steel and so forth. So there's a lot going on in this particular category right now. But I tell you what, Kazakhstan has made some moves that probably they're going to regret.
Yeah, I got to believe that people will be loath to commit capital. If you doubt me, check out what's happened in Venezuela when they basically nationalized much of the oil and gas in their country. All of a sudden, all the oil companies just pulled back and pulled out, which is why they have almost zero production. It's not zero, but it's dropped dramatically. All right, Pete, let's take a look at what's going on with Spirit, because Spirit Realty was up big today because apparently, and what does Spirit Realty do? Well, they have triple net leases with the likes of Home Depot, Dave & Buster's, Lifetime Fitness, and so forth, Circle K. In other words, a lot of the pads that you see, they call them pads in big shopping centers, those pads are owned by SPR, and SPR gets a buyout offer today, and that's why shares to the upside.
Yeah, it's amazing because the environment we're in, you just wonder who's out there and who has the liquidity to do certain things. And certainly when you get an offer like this, where we're talking about something north of $4 billion, that's a real number, John, especially in the environment that we're in right now. So certainly that's something that stands out. What an interesting business that I don't think a lot of people really focus on very often, but they really should, because there's a lot of different names out there that are doing different things in the real estate business, real estate world. But that sticks out to me as something very, very interesting. And you've got a great group of companies that you're probably not having to worry too much about as far as defaulting and so forth.
Yeah. Well, lastly, Pete, and perhaps I should have led with it instead of burying the lead, but McDonald's.
You always want to close strong.
Yeah, close strong. McDonald's up, 3% on the highs today. Now it's up right around 2%. Very strong report out of McDonald's, though. Revenue was up big, Pete.
Yeah. Well, they got slammed. We all know that. Well, not too long ago, they got slammed because of the new O drug out there that everybody's talking about. And it's just crazy. But I think the reality is set back in, and people understand that McDonald's is probably going to be around for a little while longer. As a matter of fact, they were able to raise prices, and they had a huge quarter. You talked about the revenues, but when you look at those revenues, pretty interesting how they're able to do that and the trade down effect. And it doesn't mean necessarily that people are going there every day, but they certainly are shifting some of their habits to go to certain places, whether it's a Walmart or maybe trading down even to McDonald's, whatever it might be. That's all feeding into what we're seeing. And this is a great quarter. These results were pretty daggone impressive.
Yeah. And I would say, Pete, that Ozempic, that O that Pete's talking about there, people that are on Ozempic don't eat as much. They don't drink as much. It's one of those things that was a diabetes drug that they found out if you gave it to people that didn't have diabetes, they started losing weight because they can't eat as much. They don't want to eat as much. They feel full sooner. They're not as thirsty for alcohol either. In fact, a lot of people are using it to wean themselves off of alcohol and so forth. But I would hazard a guess, Pete, that there aren't a lot of people out there that eat regularly at McDonald's that can afford $1,000 a month for the shots. Now, yes, I get it. There are $50 a month clinics that will give you that depending on your insurance, but you got to have some pretty darn great insurance. And is that the same person that's eating at McDonald's regularly? So in other words, I thought that the McDonald's sell-off on the news of Ozempic's success was overrated.
Yep.
And so I told some friends that, because they were saying, shouldn't I be shorting McDonald's and shorting Long John Silver's and shorting Yum Brands and shorting all these things? And I said,
Pepsi and Coke.
yeah, are those really the people that have that extra cha-ching in their pocket for, the $50 a month for Ozempic? I know it can potentially make people look better, feel better about losing that weight and so forth. But do they have, even at $50 a week, Pete, that's an extra $200 a month.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if the regulars at McDonald's or any of those fast food chains really have that much extra to throw at that. Time will tell, but I would not be shorting those.
No, I like this move that we're seeing today. It's not quite near the 52-week highs, but it's a pretty nice bounce back over the last couple of sessions. So we are seeing things go in a positive way for McDonald's. I think for the right reasons. You just diagnosed it very, very well. I think that was really the reason it got sold off, but I think that created the opportunity that we're seeing now.
Yep. And remember, you can always take advantage of opportunities, folks. So check it out over at marketrebellion.com/get started to see where we're seeing those opportunities, because there's opportunities to the upside with calls and to the downside with puts. And if you don't know how to do it already, we can teach you. marketrebellion.com/get started. All right, Pete, I loved this one because Mr. Pfizer himself went to Denver with, of course, his teammates, the Kansas City Chiefs. And Denver cleaned their clocks.
They did.
I mean, I don't know what happened to Denver. I don't know if they just hate Taylor Swift or what the story is, but they were not big fans. And in fact, as they started to roll on Kansas City, they started to play Taylor Swift songs in between plays and things.
That's just amazing. Well, Russell Wilson had a great game, actually. Threw a couple of touchdowns, I think 3 touchdown passes. His wife might know something about music.
Sierra.
Too, right? Yeah.
And
that's what I was going to say.
You know what? Sierra, he had a birthday party for her over at the Waffle House, just because he's got that kind of cheddar that he can take her out for Waffle House. But no, I mean, anybody that takes somebody out to the Waffle House is doing them a favor, because it's going to be a great meal and it's going to be a fun time with fun people.
Trevor Lawrence brought his entire offensive line out, and everybody's like, he's got all this money. Why is he bringing them there? Because a couple guys had never been there before.
Yep.
So he's like, hey, man, until you experience Waffle House, you haven't lived.
So for those of you who missed it, I have from, what is it, Jomboy Media or something like that? I think it's JOMBOY Media. I saw this one on their Instagram account. And Jared, if you don't mind, play this one, sir.
Roll the tape.
That's the those are the Broncos fans.
That's Mile High, and those guys
celebrating Mr. Pfizer going down, just like Joe Frazier. Frazier goes down. They went down, folks.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even a close game, as it turns out. It was maybe close in the first quarter, but then a lot of mistakes by the Chiefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Chiefs, it's funny. When they lost their first game of the year to the Detroit Lions, we all just said, well, they just weren't ready yet. They hadn't been playing in the preseason. We all understand some of the reasons why you might lose a game like that. But to lose a game to Denver, who is arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL, not the worst, because there are worse out there.
Carolina.
Arizona, Carolina. I mean, there's a long list.
Maybe even
actually.
Atlanta.
Although I will say this, one of the things I find the most interesting about pro football right now is just like with college football, parity. I mean, you look around right now at how many teams are 4-4 because there's so much parity, and then the leader might in that conference be 5-3. Everybody else is 4-4, and then you've got the couple out there that are really, really bad, and they've won 1 or 2 games. It's pretty pathetic. But we are seeing more and more parity, I think, in the game. It makes it a lot more fun. And as they say, John, any given Sunday, somebody can line up. They're all professionals. So, I think sometimes people forget that, but every single team is filled with superstars that are the greatest player that ever came out of their college, probably. That's why they're in the NFL. So the fact that Denver beat them, as shocking as it is, I wouldn't say it's the most shocking thing I've ever seen.
And the fact that is underlined, Pete, is that the Dallas Cowboys against the Rams, the Rams had every single thing go wrong that could go wrong. I mean, they had blocked punts for safeties. They had a free kick on that after that blocked punt that the guy returned it like 60 yards or something like that. Dak Wilson played like he was Mahomes. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. They just tore them up. And yet, on any given Sunday, you could have reversed that. Dallas could have gone to SoFi Stadium, Pete, and they could have got their butts kicked because Dak could have done what Dak unfortunately does, throws to the wrong color jersey. Yeah. And if that happens a couple times, all of a sudden they're chasing 20 points in the first half or 30 points in the first half. So again, any given Sunday, I agree.
Any given Sunday. Real quick, we're going to do this. John, top 4 guys in college football. I'm going to give you Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State. There's my 4 for the playoffs.
Yep, and that's who it should be.
Yeah.
And all 4 of those are undefeated right now. Some of them have been pushed, like obviously Ohio State, pushed hard, came back against Notre Dame and basically won out. Florida State had just a dogfight against Duke.
Yeah.
And that is a tenacious Duke team and a great defense, which is not something I've ever said before about Duke, ever.
Yeah.
And Mr. Talkington, Ross Talkington, that's of course the husband of the Talkington that was on TV with us.
Bryn.
Bryn. He played defensive end for Duke. And he would be the first to admit, most people don't really think we got a great defense at Duke, but this year they do. And Florida State came back with 3 touchdowns in, I think, the 4th quarter to beat them.
Great quarterback, great receivers. They got all the talent in the world. And there's still Washington undefeated too. But the eyeball test for me right now, Washington looked great for about the first 6 weeks. The last couple of weeks, they're kind of gone.
They're teetering.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of injuries, Pete, because I haven't delved that closely into it, and I've not bet them at all this year. Otherwise, I would have looked into the injury report. But I got to believe that they're banged up.
Yeah.
Because you're right. The games are a lot closer than you would think.
Yeah.
With Washington being as good and undefeated as they are.
Watch out for Oregon. The way they put a butt whooping on Utah this weekend, Oregon's going to be a fun team to watch the rest of the year.
Well, it's going to do it for us, folks. We appreciate you tuning in. A special, different Rebels Edge with us side by side instead of.
We really aren't. It's just a separate thing here that they've done. It's really pretty cool. Nice job, Jared.
Nice job, Jared. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Till then. Back.